Charles Bediako never actually played in an NBA game, but he opened up the floodgates, and now Amari Bailey may become the first NBA returner to college basketball.
Welcome in to Locked On College Basketball Squad Show, your go-to spot for everything happening on the hardwood. From blue blood battles to bracket busters and everything in between. Join the squad of hoops junkies as we break down the biggest stories with the boldest takes and unfiltered opinions. Because here, we don't hold back. It's the College Basketball Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, folks? Happy February. The best part of February is that it is so much closer to March. Welcome in, everybody, to the third Locked On College Basketball Squad Show. I am your host and host of Locked On Zags and Locked On College Basketball, Andy Patton, and I am joined today by Isaac Shade of Locked On College Basketball and Locked On Tar Heels, Leaf Tulane of Locked On Wildcats, Zachary Anderson-Yaxheimer of Locked On Bruins, and JJ Jackson of Locked On Blue Devils. Great crew today, some great teams. We also got a lot of fun conversation here. Again, we're all part of the Locked On Podcast Network here, the #1 sports podcasting network. Also, today's episode brought to you by Mazda. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work. Well, that's what defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Guys, we got to talk about this Amari Bailey developing situation. Former UCLA guard. Very glad to have Yax on the show to talk about this as he is looking to make a comeback in college basketball. We'll talk about that and the Charles Bediako situation. Bama now just 1-2 since he has returned for the Crimson Tide. We also got an insane comment from TNT analyst Jamal Mashburn about Cooper Flagg and where he'd fit in this freshman class. We're going to break that down, talk about some of the games over the weekend, and then we'll get you ready for this Saturday's game between Duke and Carolina. One of the best rivalries in all of sports. Should be fantastic. We got both JJ and Isaac here to break that game down, and we got some big Monday action to get to as well. Lots of fun stuff today, guys. Again, it feels like we kept seeing the dam breaking on this story. And for everybody who kind of had that doomsday of, Cherry Darlon is the first G League player to go to college basketball. And then London Johnson does it. And it's like, well, next we're going to have guys who got drafted. And that's what happened. James Nagy was drafted, but he never signed an NBA contract. So it's okay. And then Charles Bediako, who did sign an NBA contract, who also was returning to college basketball. And it's like, well, if you were holding on to hope that there would eventually be a line, it was, well, at least Bediako never actually played in an NBA game. Well, here we go. Amari Bailey played college basketball in the 22-23 season for Yaxheimer's UCLA Bruins. He's been out of college basketball for the last couple of years, would be a senior this year, but because the 5-year window, he could, in theory, have eligibility next year, and that is what he is preparing a lawsuit against the NCAA to potentially have. Yax, I want to start with you as our resident UCLA expert. What did you make of this story for Bailey? And first of all, I was shocked he declared in the first place after that 22-23 season. It feels like he thinks he made a mistake. Yeah, it seems like that's the case, but I guess you don't get any consequence for those kind of mistakes at this point.
Well, the idea was you're supposed to, right? That was a bad decision. That was a bad UCLA team the year after he left. He would have been the man. I think Mick Cronin's tenure would be completely different if Amari Bailey stayed that extra year at the Dembona. He was hurt. He played well. He played well after Jalen Clark got hurt, but not enough to the point that he deserved to be a guy to go into the draft and get drafted in the first round. That's not what happened, and that's how his career played out mostly in Charlotte and throughout the G League. 10 NBA games, I believe. A bad mistake on his own right, and at some point, we keep talking about how it's a mistake. If the worst mistake he made was to go from college basketball to the NBA, I don't think that's a life-breaking mistake, but it's not something he should be able to come back to and play college basketball. Now, if he's available, UCLA's got quite a few open roster spots next year, and I'll take him, and Mick Cronin will take him because his job is getting hot right now, even though he's got a massive buyout the next few years.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I mean, to me, it just feels like Bailey and Bediako have both admitted, hey, I felt like I should have stayed in college basketball. And I can respect admitting that, but it was a black and white line. Like, it was very clear when you chose to stay in the NBA draft that is what you were foregoing, was your college basketball eligibility. And Elliot Abrams is the lawyer who's going to represent Bailey in this lawsuit. He's the lawyer who represented Tyron Grant Foster to get his eligibility back. He has fought the NCAA many times. And he basically said, you got a college-age kid who wants to go to college, and you've got a system that says, too bad, you've gone to do a different league, so now you're out forever. Yeah, that is exactly what the system is in place, and that's why it's in place. And Bailey can go back to college. He can go get his degree, and nothing's stopping him from doing that. But there is a reason that these kind of guys are not allowed to come back and play college basketball. And again, the floodgates have already been opened. The Bediako case is February 6th. That is when it'll be heard in court. So that'll be an incredibly important day for the future of college basketball. I don't blame Bailey for trying this. But I mean, come on, like, we have to have a line here. I suppose the difference between not ever playing an NBA game like Bediako and playing 10 games is fairly minimal, but it still feels like we've crossed the threshold where this is remotely reasonable.
Yeah, I really don't want to see this go in that direction. And the fact that we're even, discussing this shows that it has legs and that this is becoming more and more a part of the conversation, right? Like, I loved having the hypotheticals in my brain, guys, being a Duke guy, being, Mr. One and Done, where it's always fun. Or if you go back to the one season that Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett were there, in a super fun world, I like to think about Marvin Bagley III and Wendell Carter Jr. being sophomores. And the year before that, you'd have Jason Tatum on the team as a junior. And the year before that, it'd be a senior Brandon Ingram making up a Duke team of what it would look like if these guys did use all of their eligibility. But that's not the case. They made the decision to go on to the NBA, and I understand that I'm using the best of the best and guys that were so successful at the NBA that they wouldn't even think about going to the next place. But Duke has their own cases, right, where DJ Stewart in years past has said, I left way too early as a McDonald's All-American and a 5-star recruit and someone that would love to possibly come back to Duke. He's not taking steps to do things like this because he understands that he's turned on to the next chapter of his life. It's just crazy that we've ended up in here, and I don't want to see this become the norm, that guys go and say, well, can I do this, knowing that if I don't succeed at the professional level, college is still a backup option for me. Once you're gone, you're gone.
Somewhere along the lines, we lost common sense. Like that the whole idea is you go to college, you learn, and you can continue to learn, but that doesn't make you a professional right away. You got to go learn to be a pro, and you can't come back when you're a pro to do the same thing in college and get paid for it. I had an idea. If he comes back, he shouldn't get paid for playing college basketball. If for some reason, somewhere that happens, he shouldn't get paid. That's a ludicrous idea that he even could come back and get paid, but somewhere along the lines, common sense went out the window.
Well, and like for me, with Bediako in this game, the game that Alabama played against Florida a few hours ago, as we're recording this on Sunday afternoon, is the announcers were talking about how Bediako is, he's tougher, he's stronger, he's more physical than he was a few years ago. And it's like, yeah, because he's been playing against pros. And they acknowledge that straight up. They're like, he should be stronger. He should be more capable. Again, he didn't play that badly, but Alabama's front court, which was supposed to be like, oh, now that we've added Bediako, we're going to be able to compete with Florida, the best front court in the country. And they wiped the floor with them. The Gators absolutely obliterated Alabama, scored 100 points. I think 70 or close to 70 of them were in the paint. I mean, it just did not make a lick of a difference in this game. But yeah, there's some level of like, why do we have a guy who has 3 years of not only, going up against pros and playing against experienced players, but 3 years of being in an NBA or at least a G League weight room and on a weight training plan? Like, I know he's of the age where you could still be a college student. And I think one of Amari Bailey's quotes on this topic was like, well, I think, guys want to play against the best players that are their age. Like, they don't want to play against 28-year-olds, but they want to play against guys their age. And like, yeah, I get that. And I get still being in that age group, but there's a difference between having, gone to the NBA and having played professionally and then coming back. I think it's just the issue is like, again, there's no consequences for those actions. And for Bediako. And then I think the other element, and I think this is what I want to talk about next with the Alabama side of this all is, how much do we think there's a team chemistry thing that comes into play here? Any team, mid-season additions just feels chaotic to begin with, but you bring back a guy, you're showing, some level of favoritism to a player you've coached previously. The other bigs on the roster are now losing playing time. It has to create some kind of tension in that locker room. I don't know that that's exactly why they're 1-2. They played some good teams, but you got to think it's contributing to this, right?
Here's the thing for me. with that is like, and in fact, even going back to what we were just saying is like, I don't really care the outcome of the games. As soon as we start letting that dictate this conversation, then that becomes another issue, because I don't want to adjudicate this based on whether it's successful for Alabama or successful for wherever Amari Bailey goes. And so I think that's one part of this that I want to make sure to make known. But then, yeah, Andy, like, we've used the analogy on our show before of that scene from the movie Miracle, where they try to bring in that guy that's been playing really well in college, that whole thing. It doesn't make sense. Now, if we get to an off season and at that point we're going to bring in Amari Bailey, maybe. But similarly, I want to go upstream of that, and whether it happens in season or out of season, I want the decisions to be dictated by whatever our rules are going to be. Is it going to be the cutoff between Bediako and Bailey of like, you've played in an NBA game, you haven't, therefore whatever that line is, in season or out of season, success on court or not success on court, I want to get upstream and make sure that whatever those lines are going to be, that we actually have some lines of demarcation. That's what matters to me.
Can it just be as simple as if you've declared and foregone eligibility, then you're not allowed eligibility? I mean, the other thing that I think happens is the flip side of, you see Amari Bailey made a mistake. Charles Bediako acknowledged he made a mistake of going to the NBA. What I think is going to happen is guys that are even at all in the bubble of can they be a first rounder, second rounder, they will stay back because you're going to make a ton of money. You're going to be an All-American. And you're going to do what JT Toppin did. Okay, I can get $4 million from Texas Tech rather than be like the 37th player drafted. And then unless you're older, that's probably what's going to happen. In the case of Amari Bailey, I was at the combine that year, and he was terrible. He was schooling Dylan Jones, who actually ended up being a first-round pick from Weber State, and they were talking smack in like a one-on-one setting, but he was not good in the games. And then he stayed in. And I remember there were numerous guys who did that, but there wasn't the option of getting paid in college at that point. So it made sense. So but I don't understand what delusions these guys, I guess it's not delusional anymore because the NCAA allows it, but I don't understand what delusion these guys operate under to be like, oh, you know what? I went and foregoed my eligibility. You know what? Let's go back to college, and how that's even like something that's a thought that's constructed to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's just one of those, it's turned into this really insane situation. I'm really curious to see where it goes from here. Isaac, to your point, I think whatever the line of demarcation is important, but also like a deadline. And that's kind of what Leaf was getting at too, of like roster moves cannot be happening in late October, in November. Like obviously there's a deadline to enroll in classes and whatever, but you can get around that, enroll in online classes and hope to join the team. If you don't make the roster out of training camp at the NBA level, like that to me just feels it's putting this intense amount of pressure on coaches. They can't hold roster spots. Like there has to be some deadline on that. And it's like, maybe there's a reality where like, I would be fine with a situation where you go to the NBA draft, you declare, you stay in, you don't make the NBA after a year, you want to come back. Like, I don't love that, but I could see that working as long as there's some like timeline and calendar that makes sense, where these coaches aren't having to try to grab guys in the middle of the season. Like that just feels very antithesis to what college basketball and college athletics in general has been about. All right, guys, go ahead.
I was going to say it all circles back to the hoop state and back to the Charlotte Hornets, that 2023 draft class that featured Amari Bailey, James Najee, and then Nick Smith Jr. and Brandon Miller. The fact that both of these guys were drafted by the same team. Wow.
That is wild. I had not put that together, but Charlotte, thanks a lot, Charlotte, for doing that to us. I want to talk about this freshman class. Specifically, I want to talk about Jamal Mashburn's recent comment over the weekend that he said Cooper Flagg would be the 6th best player had he stayed in this class and been a freshman this year. I think we can all agree that that's pretty ludicrous, but where would we actually slot him in? We're going to talk about that, some other stuff from around the weekend of college basketball, all coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It is the last call for football on FanDuel. We got one final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on all the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. It's Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of all of it. with the specials offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the Seattle Seahawks, riding with the New England Patriots, or building one last same game parlay, this is the game everybody's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from the opening kickoff all the way to the final whistle. And if you're a new customer, you can bet just $5 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Before we get to Super Bowl Sunday, we got Big Monday tomorrow. Texas Tech, 4.5-point favorites, hosting the Kansas Jayhawks. Really fun battle. We'll talk about that later in the show. I like the Red Raiders to bounce back after their loss over the weekend to Central Florida. Folks, make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, folks, continuing our conversation here, Locked On College Basketball Squad Show. So excited to have these going here. Like we said, it's February. Very excited to be getting towards the end of the season and the most fun month of the year. For those of you who missed this, I think it was on Saturday, Jamal Mashburn, who's an analyst for TNT, former college basketball and NBA player, he said some inflammatory things in the past, but this was insane. He said that if he were taking Cooper Flagg somewhere in this class, because again, for those of you who don't remember, Cooper Flagg reclassified, so his freshman year at Duke, in theory, should have been his senior year of high school, meaning he would be a current freshman right now. And having seen even what Cooper Flagg is doing in the NBA, Jamal Mashburn believes he would only be the 6th best freshman in this class. JJ, I'm going to start with you because obviously you saw every single game that Cooper Flagg played as a freshman last year. You've likely followed him in the NBA, and you also see one of the players that I assume Mashburn would have ahead of Cooper Flagg, which is, of course, Cameron Boozer. What do you make of this statement from Mash here?
JJ, before you go, I want to ask a clarifying question. Was his statement that it was about college production or where he would go in the 26 NBA draft?
Yeah, it's like he thinks he would be the 6th best. He's saying in a hypothetical situation where Flagg were still in college, he thinks he would only be the 6th best player in this class at this point.
Okay, so not about NBA draft stock.
I think in theory also about that, but yeah, not exactly, I suppose.
When I saw this come across my my social media feeds, it was one of those moments where, is AI happening? Like, did someone put this video together? Like, are we not prisoners of the moment when you just saw this Cooper Flagg fella score 49 points in an NBA game and follow it up with another 34-point double-double? I mean, it's just crazy what he's able to do at that level. How in someone's brain do they then say, well, when I look at these college basketball guys that are currently playing, he's 6th. I don't know how someone could put something like that together, given what you just saw him do at the NBA level. Okay, fine. Go back to the college game. Well, does a guy not leading his team in every statistical counting category all the way to the Final Four, setting the record for most ACC wins in a single season with 19, going on to play, by the way, with the starting 5 that every single player was drafted because he made them better along the way? How do you get to that conclusion? And I do love this year's freshman class, and obviously a major fan of what Cam Boozer has been doing there. But Cooper Flagg's just different. Do we need to remind ourselves that when the USA Olympic team that won the gold medal got to send out invites to select players, there was only one guy that got that invite from this group of players, and that was Cooper Flagg, and all of the pros were raving about him. How in the world do we get here, fellas?
Yeah, absolutely ludicrous statement in my mind.
Let me go a step further. I don't want it to be this Duke bias thing, right? That Jamal Mashburn, who was on the wrong side of Christian Leitner's shot in that Duke-Kentucky game. And shout out to him for 28 points in that game, but I seem to recall Duke winning it. And I'm never, is that what this deal is? The Duke guys you can't get past? I don't know, man. I don't know.
I think this is the craziest part is it's not really like this short memory thing, though, JJ. You remember when they were talking about, if Coop stayed in his class, he'd be the 3rd or 4th best player because AJ is a better prospect. And so I'm from Utah. I heard all about AJ. I've now seen him 4 times live and all this stuff for now about 2 years about how AJ is better. I was on your show, I think, at the beginning of last year. and talked about how different Cooper Flagg is. And as an NBA draft guy, which is what I did for a long time, I would have taken Cooper over AJ by far out of high school, and they're the same age. Not to mention in college, when he was 17 years old, I might be off by a point or two here, but when he was 17, before turning 18, I want to say his averages against ranked competition was 26 and 11. So I don't think it's close. I would say if I had to rank him in terms of college production, I'd go Coop, Boozer, but I want to be clear. Darren Peterson's the best player in college basketball. It's just he hasn't done it at the same consistency level due to health issues than Boozer. But it's Coop, Boozer, DP, AJ, and then probably Caleb Wilson or Acuff at 5, in my opinion. But like I still don't think it's even close for Coop. Like imagine he could be 18, 19, like instead of being 17 turning 18. Like I don't think there's a player in college basketball that you could put 1 through 5 and get you 20, 10, and 5.
And let's not remember, or let's not forget that he was talking about Koa Peat, specifically Jamal Mashburn. Like this, like where would Koa Peat is great, but I mean he's probably 10th. I would need to go through and make a list, but you know what I'm saying? Like no.
As the Arizona guy, I actually did one of my very first shows, and I think I texted JJ about this just to like as an idea. I said, what do you think about the comparison between this Arizona team and last year's Duke team? The premise was essentially Cooper Flagg and Koa Peat both play the 4. They're young. Then you have Con Knippel and Braden Burries. They both play like this heady, composed 2-guard, and both teams are enormous and should be good on defense. Turns out the Arizona side of it and the team part was more true than I even intended. But Cooper Flagg, like the pushback that I wanted from people on that was that Cooper Flagg's different than Koa Peat. And he is. And Koa Peat's great. He should be all conference. I don't think it's crazy to say he could be an All-American, but I wouldn't push that agenda. But Cooper Flagg was easily the best player in college basketball last year and what was a great year of college basketball.
And today is the anniversary of the Luka trade, right? So the Mavericks got rid of that. And Cooper's so good that we thought the NBA rigged the draft and the ping pong balls for him to go to the Mavericks. That's how good Cooper Flagg is. I don't know, besides maybe Darren Peterson, who would make that comparison of these next few guys for this year. But this is the anniversary of the day that trade happened. And the Mavs, I'm not going to say they're better off for it. I know my brothers and my stepdad would be mad if I said that. But I think they're happy with Cooper Flagg while still lamenting saying goodbye to Luka. So, I mean, Cooper, got to be number 1, number 2 compared to these freshmen.
Yeah, it's insane to imagine. To say 5th or 6th is ridiculous. Like, I don't even know. I think anything lower than 3rd is pretty insane to say about Cooper Flagg. I think he's first. I want to let me get that out of the way. I think it's him, and I think it's a pretty clearly. I think from a college production standpoint, the only player who's particularly close to him is Boozer. And then from a talent perspective, I think you do have to argue Darren Peterson. He's tremendous. If you're listening to this right now, go watch the dunk that he threw down against BYU this weekend. That was absurd. He is a ridiculously talented player, but I don't even I could see there have been an argument of like Flagg versus DP, maybe, had they been in the same draft class. And certainly I think it would have been necessary for DP to stay healthy, but yeah, he's not better than DiManza, especially defensively. He just doesn't bring the same amount of stuff as what Flagg is able to do. Boozer, they're somewhat similar in the sense that they're productive on both sides, but he's just doesn't have that upside either. And that's no knock on Boozer. I just don't think he has Flagg's upside. And then, anybody after that. I mean, Caleb Wilson and Koa Peat, I love both of them. They're both great players. They have such, pretty obvious flaws to their game, whereas Cooper doesn't. Like, it's just, to me, it's just a pretty ridiculous statement to make. It seems intentionally inflammatory. I'm curious if any of you would even would strongly argue for Flagg anywhere other than first at all, because I think that's a pretty limited argument too.
I'm glad that we're all raising the flag. I mean, it's an easy thing for all of us to do. I don't know that there's much discussion beyond. I just can't get over what we've been seeing at the NBA. Like, he's just long been lauded this great prospect. And again, the USA invite that he has leading up to the Olympics with one of the best teams ever assembled. And they're all raving about the guy. Like, we can't forget about these things that played out for Mr. Flagg. So capture the flag, raise the flag, everything in regards to Cooper Flagg here.
If it's an NBA draft one, I think there's an argument for Darren Peterson in the sense of if Darren Peterson played 2 halves of every game this season, there's a legitimate world where he's scoring like 28 a game. Like, his efficiency I'll have to come back to me in a minute or two, and I'll find you this exact efficiency thing. But he's 95th percentile at better in every scoring category, percentage-wise, and in terms of total output. Like, he's unbelievable. And so I think there's a world in the NBA draft, but I don't think his impact on the game, partially due to injury and health concerns, but also due to the way he plays, isn't as impactful as the way Cooper Flagg does. He's the type of guy who can play 1 through 5, lead your team in every statistical category, like JJ said. And if you want 40, he can give you 40. Whereas Darren Peterson, it's like, okay, here's 40, but nothing else.
Yeah. And
I want to
wonder if Jamal Mashburn's thing was intentionally inflammatory.
Yeah,
that's the other thing I wonder about this is, like, was it intentionally inflammatory? Was it just an awful take? And you just like, hey, some people are really good at playing basketball, but maybe not evaluating others that do, it's like, I'd love to talk to him and say, hey, buddy, come here. Like,
Why did you say
if you had that one to do over again, would you like, could I give you an opportunity to walk that one back? Would you take, just where is his head in it? That's what I want to know.
There were a lot of really good basketball games this weekend, but I want to talk about one in particular before we move on and get to some of the previews for this upcoming week, including that really fun one between Duke and Carolina. But Yax, I want to go to you because that was an incredibly tense and amazing basketball game between Indiana and UCLA. I know it did not go the way the Bruins wanted it to go. Double overtime, down 10 with 90 seconds to go, storm back, force overtime, agonizing loss. But man, truly one of the best, just most exciting college basketball games of the entire year. And I feel like it's a game that not as many people saw because it wasn't, ranked on ranked like we have with Michigan State and Alabama, Florida, and all those other games. But man, that was an instant classic between those two teams.
I'm going to say this. In a year for college basketball, there's been many crazy games. You could argue that there have been crazy games even across town, dare I say. I don't like to talk a lot about USC, but man, that game earlier in the year in the Galen Center, San Diego State, Troy, there's been some crazy games this year in college basketball. So I'm not even sure this one could crack the top 5. I would say it was the best game of the week, though. For UCLA, Indiana, I wouldn't say it was a well-played game. It was an entertaining, drama-filled, tension-filled, down-to-the-wire battle. UCLA and Indiana, they combined to shoot, 72 free throws? There's a lot of complaints about the officiating. UCLA pushed the Indiana player, I forget who it was, on the sideline to lead to a steal and a bucket in the final minute. And then you had the last second review in double overtime where it looked like the ball was off the Indiana player's hands. And then just for UCLA to give up a wide open layup opportunity to lead to the game-winning free throw and the win for the Hoosiers. UCLA had the ball at the end of overtime. But in the end, the Bruins had more players available due to foul availability. They had more opportunities to win this game, including the lead in overtime, the last possession. They had the ball with the lead in double overtime, and they still couldn't close this game at home in front of an electric crowd. They didn't exactly go like Kurt Signetti did for Indiana. The UCLA Bruins had Chesney speaking, but they didn't utilize the energy to get a big home win against a team traveling across the country. Great game, great energy. Just the Bruins, I think, really failed to get a big-time win on the West Coast.
Well, folks, we're going to move on. We're going to start looking at some previews for this week because we got an electric game, one of the best rivalries in sports between Carolina and Duke to talk about this weekend. We got some big Monday games that are going to be fantastic on Monday as well. We'll get to that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, this is Mazda's moving the game forward for those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. And emotions were absolutely crazy this weekend across college basketball. We had some chippiness in UCLA, Indiana, as Yax just talked about. We had a lot of chippiness in Michigan State, which is totally what you would expect. Otega Owe had some words after Kentucky's win over Arkansas. Graham Ike said it was, quote, extremely personal when Gonzaga beat St. Mary's as a rivalry game on Saturday. Always fun to see those emotions, not just from the players, but from the coaches as well. Todd Golden, he had his words for Alabama and Nate Oates, and his team backed it up with a massive win over the Crimson Tide. Always fun to see that kind of attitude and swagger in college basketball. And that just reminds you what it really takes to raise the bar at this level. It's that extra work that goes in off the court. It's dialing in every detail. It's giving it that extra fire, that grit, and that never quit attitude. And Mazda puts that same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel, but what it takes to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. All right, folks, we are going out to the weekend. We're going to talk about Big Monday later. We're going to talk about that in a second, as we know that those games are coming up sooner. But we got an opportunity to talk to our hosts of Locked On Blue Devils and Locked On Tar Heels. We got to take advantage because that game is coming up on Saturday, one of the best rivalries in the sport. Duke, North Carolina, both teams playing well. I know Carolina had that stumble out west in their conference matchups against Stanford and Cal.
Of you to say it that way.
Well, they've won 3 in a row since then, so at least they're on the right track. Obviously, both teams have a game coming up leading into that week. You don't want to see any trap games. That, fortunately, I think for both of your teams, it's Syracuse and Boston College. So hopefully not any stumbles there before we get to that big time matchup. JD, I'll start with you. Obviously, one of the stronger front courts in college basketball for Duke, but also going up against a really, really good one in North Carolina and Caleb Wilson and Henry Vasar. Kind of what are you looking for in this matchup here against that front court in particular?
Yeah, this is going to be the real deal. I mean, this is one of those games that obviously, no matter who's on the rosters, like I'm going to be watching, and everyone in the sports world should be watching anytime Duke takes on North Carolina. It's been long overdue for us to be back in a position with both of these teams in a top 20 spot, and both parties have kind of let the other down for a while. But what a big opportunity it is for these teams to be on the national stage once again, and the front courts to show up the way that they have all season long. I do think that's going to be one of the biggest factors in a game like this, with what Cam Boozer can do on the interior, along with Patrick Gongba. Malik Brown has been more assertive offensively in recent games for Duke. I think that's an added wrinkle there. Duke did see Henry Vasar last season in their run to the Final Four, and a fun matchup that they had against him and Kaman Malawach on the interior there. So good to run it back there, but they certainly haven't seen athletes quite like Caleb Wilson so far this season. A lot of Duke's primetime games this year, the star players have been sitting out for whatever reason with injuries and whatnot. So I'll be happy to see Caleb Wilson actually take the floor and see what kind of showdown we can have there. But I do think the front court is where it all starts with a game like this.
To JJ's point, I'm so glad you didn't just say Cam and Gongba, JJ, because obviously Malik Brown plays a huge role in this game. North Carolina doesn't necessarily have that same level of depth as, hello, I'm Duke and I'm bringing one of the best defenders in the country off the bench, right? And like Jaren Stevenson is great, but North Carolina would be in much better shape in that regard if Van Allen Lubin had stayed as he planned to, or if Jalen Washington wasn't at Vanderbilt and those were the guys coming off the bench so that Stevenson could be at the 3 or something of that regard. So watch out not only for those 2 frontline starters on both teams, but how the depth affects it coming behind that. And then, you potentially imagine in a game like this where maybe those front courts cancel each other out some. Who is that? JJ and I always talk about this when we do our crossover for these games. Who is that unexpected dude that's going to be an X factor? Is it one of the international guys that came over? Could Dame Sarr or Luka Bogovac just go bonkers in this game? I don't know what it is. Maybe Caden Boozer drops like 8 dimes and has just 2 something like that. Like that's what I want to see is who brings in that wrinkle that's completely unexpected for either team. Either way, it's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, the Boozers and Caleb Wilson came together to win a Peach Jam championship with Knight Riders a couple years ago, and so they know each other so well. Obviously, that's a fun storyline as part of this game. Game day will be there as always happens. I can almost guarantee they'll be there again for the regular season finale in Cameron. Going to be a lot of fun. Cannot wait to see rivalry. Throw all the record books out there, that whole thing. Let's get going on Saturday night.
What stands out to me in this matchup too is we've seen some issues with Carolina, specifically defensively in the front the backcourt. Obviously, that Ibuka Okori scored 1,000 points against them in that Stanford game or whatever it was, and we've just seen that be an issue for Carolina. And while Duke's scoring comes mostly from their front court, obviously they don't have like quite the same level of like elite point guard play, but we have seen Isaiah Evans be absolutely great, and we've certainly seen Foster and Boozer, like you mentioned, kind of have some big moments as well. But it feels to me like it's kind of a matchup of like one of Carolina's weakest parts isn't exactly Duke's strength. But I wonder if like in particular, if Isaiah Evans could really be a huge X factor in this game offensively against a Duke or against a North Carolina backcourt that hasn't been all that great on that end of the floor.
And I will say the shots haven't necessarily been falling for Isaiah Evans as of late. He's still finding ways to score in other ways, which is what he was not doing as a freshman. So I hate to, cause so much concern for North Carolina, but I would hope the law of averages plays out and we're due for Showtime Slim living up to his name and putting on a big time performance. And as the state of North Carolina kid that sees a big time matchup go for this. So like Isaac said, I mean, it's Duke and North Carolina, man. Everybody's going to be watching. I know it's going to be an epic game. Leaf, what do you think, man? I got to hear from you, man, a matchup like this.
I think Duke's definitely the better team if you're going to go the way they're constructed and from top to bottom. They've got, in my opinion, the better player between Cam and Wilson, but that's going to be the storyline. To me, the difference is really North Carolina should have an equal footing in the backcourt, but there's just been more inconsistency in the backcourt than you'd expect for a team they brought in Evans from Colorado State, and he's been a disappointment. Dixon's been pretty good, but usually there's a Joel Berry, there's a Kendall Marshall, there's someone like that. And Seth Trimble's got hurt in the middle of the year. So I'm a little lower on Carolina's backcourt. I'm honestly pretty low on Duke's backcourt compared to how good they're supposed to be or how well Duke could recruit. So to me, the difference is really Duke's pieces fit better together. It's Caleb Wilson and Visar comprise so much of what North Carolina does, and Duke has the size and the Malik Brown factor to mitigate that. And I just think it's harder for Carolina to generate points. But like Isaac said, you got to throw everything out of the window when these two teams meet. Like the last 60 meetings, whatever it is, it's even in points. So I expect a good one. If you asked me who is going to win, I'd take Duke, but I don't feel that confident in it.
Well, with apologies to North Carolina Syracuse, which is a big Monday game that is taking place, it is not the game that is taking place because that'll be Kansas at Texas Tech. Texas Tech coming off of a tough loss to Central Florida. They went out on the road and were down pretty much the entire game, just couldn't quite get it going against a pretty good Knights team. Meanwhile, Kansas, of course, coming off their big win over BYU. This should be a really fun match. I'm excited about this one. Obviously, the Darren Peterson of it all is always the storyline, but I'm also really excited to see Flory Badunga versus JT Toppin in the front court for this one. Should be a really fun matchup. Anybody have any thoughts on how this one might shake out on Monday night?
Andy, here's the issue. I don't know. Did you see all the pictures going around social media of Christian Anderson out at Magic Kingdom, at midnight on Friday? Did you see that?
I heard a little bit about it. Yeah, I didn't see too much on it though.
No, I'm completely joking.
Look, I was going to say, how did I miss that?
I love that I hooked you guys in on that one. No, look, for Texas Tech, you just go lose a game on the road. It happens. It's Big 12 play. UCF's knocked off a couple people here and there. They can do it. Coach Dawkins is great. But going home, hosting Kansas, and who knows? I mean, Darren Peterson might have a cramp already. We just don't even know what's going to happen when this game happens tomorrow night. And that's the big thing is you never know. He could, like he did on Saturday, drop 18 in the first half, look unbeatable, that dunk Andy talked about, and then not even be able to be on the floor in the second half. And at that point, the difference is you're not in Allen Fieldhouse tomorrow night. You're in Lubbock, Texas. I feel like we're going to see a big, angry Texas Tech team bounce back in a big way. And look, I know Kansas is getting better and better and better, but you just to mitigate the risk of what's going to happen with Peterson, I feel like all the wise and smart money is on Tech.
Here's my question. What's worse, Kawhi Leonard or Darren Peterson in load management?
You know what they should do? They should play him as a closer. He should come in with 18 minutes left, so he's just stretching the whole game, and then he comes in, with either 16 minutes, and he comes in. He got an entry music, and he comes in, and you don't sit him. You don't sit him. At each of these media timeouts in the second half, he stands up because I'm convinced either he got hurt while dunking on top of Kebakeda, or he cramped up again while sitting at halftime. So whatever they're doing, just don't let him sit down. I'm not even joking about that. I truly think if he sits down, he cramps up. So I am joking about the closer thing, obviously, but the sitting down part is for real. The interesting part about Texas Tech, though, is Kansas has the size to battle with Toppin. They've got Badunga and Tiller. And I don't know, do you not double? Because we talked about this about Arizona and BYU last week, and I'm going to speak about the Arizona side of it in the sense of that's the team I cover. But they had the size to put guard AJ straight up and not double. It limited Richie Saunders. Richie Saunders was the best player on the floor in the second half of that game, and it was because AJ was a decoy. And the reason I bring that up is teams that guard JT Toppin without doubling tend to beat Texas Tech because then the other guys don't hit threes. And Kansas may have the size to do so. I'm not sure Badunga's quite the deterrent at the rim. I know he blocks a lot of shots, but he's slender. But you can put Tiller, you can put him on him. And then Anderson, Melvin Council he's a competitor at the very least. You never know what you're going to get from him. He's going to compete. So I do think there's a world where Kansas plays him close. I would lean Texas Tech, especially with the uncertainty about Peterson. But like personnel-wise, they have a better chance than many teams going into Lubbock because so many teams double. When they double Toppin and Donovan Atwell and these other guys hit threes, you're screwed. You have a chance when you play them straight up and say, beat us 2-on-5 with Anderson and Toppin.
I'll be watching. I'm excited to see this game unfold. Texas Tech 1 point better than Duke. And, that 1 point separates the Blue Devils from a 21-0 record this season as opposed to the 20-1 mark that we have. And hopefully Darren Peterson is going to be able to play in a game like this. I don't know, guys. Apparently people still might want Cooper Flagg to not be, but, it's just, wow, going back to that conversation from earlier. But, yeah, hopefully we get a great game on Monday night.
Well, folks, that's going to wrap it up for us today. What another fun show, another fantastic conversation, another fun week coming up of college basketball, not only on Monday. Of course, we got the great weekend games as well. Should be fantastic. Again, I'll reiterate, so excited that it is February because that means we're just 1 month away from it being March. We're going to have more of these squad shows once a week until the end of the season. So definitely check back in here, Locked On College Basketball or whatever channel you are listening to the show. But as always, we are going to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes. Cheers to Yox's Mick Bruins. And until next time, folks, peace out.